All right, we are now live on Facebook and on YouTube.
Are we backstage or everyone can see and hear you? Okay.
Will we get information as people come in? Like, can you see that people?
Well, we'll be seeing them when they comment. So,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Goes. Okay. Okay. Probably. Okay. Now, this is how the question will look like. Okay. Let's say me.
Okay.
Coming from Facebook.
Great.
Right. YouTube though.
Okay.
Quite that say I see you. Okay, delete this. Cool. I think we're good to go.
That is here.
Yeah, Thad is here.
Hi, Thad.
Hello, Dad. Good morning.
Okay.
Should we hide behind the stage? Hello, hi everyone. Good morning or good evening wherever you are. I hope that you are staying safe. My name is Aini. I'm from Malaysian Primatological Society. Today Malaysian Primatological Society or MPS and the Habitat Foundation is organizing a webinar on celebrating Malaysian small apes. So I hope that everyone is getting ready with your breakfast. Maybe you can leave your hi. You can say hi on the chat box. We are opening the chat box. And we as we move along, we are welcoming any question, any comments. If you want to ask the speakers about the gibbons and their studies, please, but you are welcome to do so. So, hi Uma, hi MRS, hello Tad, hello Jolene. Please say hi at the chat box and please introduce yourself. Thank you for coming, everyone. So let's get the ball rolling. Um, because I studied grade 8 before. So I'm not the best person to talk about the great apes or the gibbons or the unke or what. So we are bringing you three amazing speakers who are studying gibbons and siamang in Malaysia. So first up we have Mr. Ethan Pang or Ethan from MPS or USM or THF. He's going to talk about his work on Agile gibbons in Ulu Muda. And also, he's going to tell us the difference of the gibbon calls, the gibbon sounds, later in his presentation. Next up, we have Dr. Susan Lappan. We are bringing her all the way across the borders. Dr. Susan is the Appalachian State University. I hope I pronounce it right. And also the scientific advisor for Malaysian Primatological Society and helps us to initiate the small ape studies in Peninsular Malaysia since 2017. And last but not least, we have Miss Lisa Ong from Management and Ecology of Malaysian Elephants, MIMS, and she also a PhD candidate from University of Nottingham Malaysian campus. Lisa is studying elephants and six dispersal, and she's going to tell us more about how gibbons is playing an important role in regenerating forests. So they are all amazing. I'm telling you guys because they have amazing slides, amazing pictures, amazing information and stories about the gibbons and the habitat. So I hope that you are staying tuned until the end of the webinar. So Ethan, can you tell us more about the difference of the gibbon sound and more about your experience of working on agile gibbons in Ulu Muda? Over to you, Ethan.
All right, thanks, Aini. Thanks for the questions. Well, how do I put it? I'm not going to sing it the way because I can never match the skill and the quality of the given song, but I can make use of technology and let it tell the story. So before that, let me share my screen. Okay, just one moment. I'll go straight to the end. All right, so let me share my screen again so that I can better explain it. Cool. All right. So the Agile gibbon is the small ape species that I work on in Ulu Muda. So to be very honest, initially when I listen to their calls, especially the Agile gibbon and the one that is of the Lar gibbon, which is this. Okay, they are very similar. Okay, so let's compare that for now. If I click the button over here, So as you can hear, there's a peak of their song. It kind of start from a low pitch and then it move to the high pitch, okay, and then it falls back to the lower pitch. And as you can hear, there are actually two female individuals singing from there. Okay, I know that is a female because only female makes that sort of call. We call it the great call, the chorus of the song. All right, the male chorus, however, is very different from that of the female. So if you can hear it. So the male only makes a short calls, flirty calls like this. Okay, it doesn't make that loud and long and high pitched call. So this is how I tell apart the male and female's call. And when they do call together, we call it the duets. And the duets of the large gibbons to me, is different from that of Agile gibbons, though very similar, but they are very different. Okay, allow me to show you that. Okay, so large gibbon, and now is the Agile gibbon. I'm going to show you this. Now, immediately you can tell, okay, that is not the female's call. The female makes the same sort of call, though slightly different. And this playful sound is made by the female. Okay, the large gibbon doesn't do this. It doesn't go high, low, high, and low, high pitch like this. Only the Agile gibbons can do that. And then let's move to let's listen further so that we can hear the great call. Still the male. Now, here you go. Now, again, there are two females in this group. Maybe that the mother calls and then the daughters follows. Now, to me, the great call part, the high pitch part, is slightly shorter than that of the large gibbons. Okay, and before they move into that great call, it will kind of rapidly make that small calls before that. And then when I hear that, I know they are getting ready for a great call. So let me play this part again. Now getting faster, and there we go. And the large doesn't do that. The large gibbon start straight with the high pitch call. So this is how I tell them apart, really. And with a few more practice, you can actually tell them apart very easily. Of course, the Siamang is a totally different story. Okay. If I may, I can quickly play this, and this is totally different from the rest of the gibbons, I would say. All right, so it's a very different thing. I say they sound like, I don't know, some kind of forest tribe celebrating. I hope that doesn't offend you, Susan. Right. So over to you, Aini.
Oh, Aini's muted.
Are you muted?
Yep. I'm back. I'm good. So I hear from Jolene Yap, love the Gibbon song. Thanks for sharing, Ethan. From Wong Pume, hello, hi, hello from Terengganu. Any question from Ethan? Ethan just completed or passed his master this week. So fresh from oven. So any question?
Well, not
I
totally.
think I
yet.
hear the difference now.
Yeah, I passed the Viva. I still have to correct my thesis
Yeah.
and a few more steps. But yeah, that's the major milestone for me. Thank you.
Are you trying? Aren't you trying to make any gibbon song, Ethan?
No,
Please.
not enough for that.
Wonderful. Love the sound of our magnificent gibbons. Yeah. Hi from KL. Hello, Christina. Hello, Nadine. So if we don't have any question, we move on to Dr. Susan Lappan. She's going to tell us some stories on the Siamang. Susan?
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Hang on just a second.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. All right. Is it? Can you see it?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming this morning. I'm really excited to be here. I have been in love with small apes for over 20 years now and have spent every moment in the field with them that I can. And so today I want to tell you some stories about small apes. I do a lot of scientific talks where I mostly talk about data. Most of my work in Malaysia really to date has been about numbers, trying to figure out how many of each species there are with these wonderful students, working with these wonderful students like Ethan and Isa and Sue and the other great students in the USM primatology program. But sometimes we need to move beyond the numbers and get to the story. So today I'm going to share with you some of my experiences doing a different kind of field work with small apes. And specifically, I'll be discussing stories about social integration among and within Siamang societies. Siamangs are endemic to Sumatra and peninsular Malaysia. They occur only on the western edge of Sumatra and in the central part of peninsular Malaysia. Unfortunately, both of these parts of their range have suffered severe habitat loss in the past 30 to 50 years. And as a result of that, primarily, and also secondarily of illegal hunting, they have been listed as endangered throughout their range. Before I started studying apes in the wild, I thought that my experience was going to be like this. I was going to go out and have this kind of intimate, beautiful communication with wild apes, as you see, as is invoked by this beautiful picture made by Peter Ong from Project Monyet. The reality was quite different. This is a more accurate image of what I saw. This is actually the best photo taken in my first year in the field. And of course, I'm not even the one that took it. And it gives you a sense of what I looked at most of the time, which is black blobs and trees. But I like this image anyway, because it shows us a different picture of what the life of a small ape in their habitat is actually like. Because when we encounter small apes in their natural habitats, we're not usually encountering them as individuals. Small apes are thoroughly integrated into social groups. Small ape groups for most species typically consist of about 2 to a maximum of about 6 individuals. So how many individuals do you think you're seeing here? Those of you who are used to following primates or just want to make a guess can put the number that you think in the chat. So this is more what they do all day. You're looking at a bunch of lazy siamangs lying around on a branch, resting. They spend a lot of time doing that. But the things that I notice when I look at this are that, first of all, most of them are in physical contact with each other, and those that are not in physical contact are within arm's reach. Siamang societies are very cohesive. Members of a group spend almost all of their time together. Even when they're moving through the forest, foraging for food or patrolling their home range through thick vegetation, they're typically no more than a maximum of about 20 meters apart and usually much closer together. Most of the time, they're coordinating their movements with, not with the big loud songs that you just heard, but little quiet vocalizations that you only get to hear if they're not afraid of you. Little kind of you hear a lot as you're moving along underneath them when they're in the thick vegetation, because they want to stay in touch with each other. I was particularly interested in studying small apes specifically because of their interesting social behavior. Small apes are among the only 5% of mammals that typically live in pairs with a few dependent offspring. There is some variation around this. Some small ape groups will contain 3 adults perhaps, but most groups consist of an adult male, an adult female, and we see a pair bond between that adult male and adult female, and then anywhere from 0 to about 4 offspring. So I was interested in understanding how this works, in particular in Siamangs, because Siamangs do something a little different from the other small apes. They are the largest of the small apes. They are ecologically distinct in some other ways. They're the only species that overlaps with some other species of small ape throughout their entire distribution range. And they have some peculiarities in their social behavior. Specifically, Siamangs are the only small apes in which males are habitually reported to engage in infant care along with the females. So my original research project was focused on better understanding the dynamics of parental care within these Siamang groups. So off I went to the forest and made some new friends. And this is not a fantastic photo, but it shows you an animal who's important to me. So this is Bambina. Bambina was one of the first females that became a subject of my studies. I met her in the year 2000, and she's recognizable because of you can see there's some orange fur underneath her chin. Even though Siamangs are for the most part all black and largely look the same, each one has distinguishing features. So when you're following them around day after day, it becomes fairly straightforward to recognize individuals. When I met Bambina, she had a newborn. This was one of the reasons she was chosen as one of my focal animals. But she also had some older children. She had at least 3 offspring at the time that I met her. It takes most small apes anywhere from 6 to 10 years to reach physiological maturity, and it takes most females at least 10 years to establish a breeding position. So probably by the time I met her, she was already 16 at a minimum and could have been substantially older. From that time, when I met her in the year 2000, until the last time I was able to visit her, which was in 2015, Bambina gave birth to another 6 offspring. So I know she had a total of at least 9, and of them, she raised 6 of them successfully through the juvenile period. When they emigrate from the social group, we lose touch. So I don't know the fate of her offspring, but by any measure, she was a fantastically successful female. That's baby number 3 right there, Bambang. So how did she do it? Well, from the moment a baby is born in a small ape group, his mother is basically his universe. He is attached to her body full time for several months at the beginning of his life. These are some of my field data from 5 infants that I followed from their birth until about age 2. And the numbers you see in the table are the ages at which they achieved specific behavioral milestones. So you can see that none of the infants were ever once observed to be physically separate from their mother until they were at least 2 months old, and in most cases, 4 months old. And none of them ventured more than about a meter or about an arm's length from their mother until they were 4 to 6 months old. They were all completely nutritionally dependent on her until they were 6 months old, when they started eating supplementary foods. And none of them were fully weaned until their 2nd year of life, most of them near the end of their 2nd year of life. So it's a lot of work being a mother Siamang. The infants also don't travel on their own during their 1st year of life. They only started to be able to really effectively navigate their environment and move effectively between trees along with the group when they were about age 1 year. And for most of their 2nd year, they're also carried. And this is a lot of work. So how did Bambina and many other females like her manage to be so successful? they have help. In Siamang groups, as I mentioned earlier, males are unusual among small apes in being somewhat involved with infant care. This graph to the upper left gives you just an example of this. This is a sample from one group that shows you the dynamics within that group. So on the top line that you graph is the proportion of time that being the infant, and the lower line is the proportion of time that the male spent carrying the infant. And you can see that throughout much of the first year of life, the infant was carried exclusively by the mother. However, by about 1 year of age, the male had started carrying the infant. And as the year went on, the male gradually became the primary caretaker, such that after about 13 to 15 months, the mother was providing relatively little transportation for the increasingly heavy infant. We don't know why males do this, which is the question I was really trying to get at, but what we can look at is the consequences of this behavior. And when I did a comparison across groups, it became clear that the more care that males provided, the less care that females had to provide. So it wasn't really the infant that benefited from this behavior. They were well cared for regardless. It was the mother. What did that mean for the group? Well, as it turned out, females that were able to reduce the amount of time they spent caring for their babies because of male help were able to shorten the interval between subsequent births, such that females that had more help were able to produce more surviving offspring in their lifetime. Type of breeding, especially in a case like Siamang's, where older siblings sometimes are also involved in infant care, can be described as cooperative breeding. But cooperation among Siamangs isn't just limited to breeding. They also cooperate in many other aspects of their everyday lives. So Ethan already played you a snippet of a Siamang song in which the male and the female, and sometimes other members of the group, will sing a loud vocal duet to communicate with their neighbors about the status of the group. They do this because a crucial part of small ape behavioral biology is that they are territorial. Small apes exert substantial effort in defending a little patch of earth that they call home. Siamang home ranges range from about 5 hectares, those would be the smallest, up to about 40 hectares are among the largest that have been documented. So when we map the neighborhoods in which Siamangs occur, if we actually follow them around and map their home ranges, you end up with a picture that looks something like this. Each of these blobs is the area used by one of the groups in this neighborhood that I was studying. The neighborhood was kind of pinched between a river on one side that it did occasionally cross. You could see Group U could cross it, but mostly they stayed on their side of the river, and then an area that had been damaged by fire. One of the things that we noticed when we first started mapping these home ranges, and I say we because several other people were involved in this research effort, was that although they're territorial and spend a lot of time and energy in intergroup encounters, defending their territories, chasing off invaders, there are some strange exceptions. So in a couple of territorial boundaries, we noticed that some groups had some fairly large areas of overlap in which both groups were able to forage and range without provoking necessarily a lot of aggression from their neighbors. Some of these areas were large, and some of them had really high quality food resources in them, enormous figs of species that the animals really like to eat. So this was a little bit surprising. Some of them shared 20% or more of their home range. And what was also surprising in some specific cases, and I've indicated those with arrows here, is that encounters that occurred within these areas of overlap were sometimes surprisingly non-dramatic. So groups F and G, for example, could sit and feed in neighboring trees for hours without feeling the need to chase each other away, or sometimes they would sing, but without a lot of drama, if you will. And on a few occasions, I even saw them sleeping in adjacent trees. This is not what I would have expected based on the behavior of the other groups in the areas in which they had encounters. And this was a puzzle. And then several years later, when doing some analysis for a different project, I stumbled on a possible answer to why these groups were so tolerant of each other. So I was able to collect DNA from their feces, and I had been hoping to do paternity tests, but this was back in the early O's, and the technology wasn't as good as it is now, and I didn't succeed in identifying enough genetic markers from the fecal DNA to do the paternity test, but I was able to get genetic information about relatedness on the maternal line between adults. And what I found surprised me, that these 3 individuals that I've circled here, the males from groups B, F, and G, all shared a set of genetic markers indicating that they were probably either brothers on the maternal side, so they probably either shared a mother or shared, perhaps they were cousins, but they were closely related along the maternal line. We also found a similar pattern in 2 other individuals in adjacent groups. So the male in group C and the female in group S were also likely siblings with each other. A genetic relationship doesn't necessarily explain this level of social tolerance, but the combination of being relatives and also possibly having grown up in the same group may go a long way toward explaining why these individuals are so tolerant of each other. So our hypothesis became that relationships are differentiated between Siamang groups such that some individuals have much friendlier relationships than others based on their shared history and perhaps shared genes. Then several years later, one of my colleagues, Dr. Luca Marino, was in the field studying the same animals and observed something really interesting. We saw 2 males displaced from their group. They were aggressively evicted by invaders from outside. The group B male was displaced and Bambina got a new pair mate. And the group G male was also displaced by a male that we already knew. This male had grown up in group C, so this was a member of a neighboring group. And what happened was both males from group C came in, worked together to evict the group G male, and then the younger male became established as the breeding male in group G. And as soon as this happened, everything changed. So for the 10 years prior to this, the home range boundaries had been incredibly stable. After this social upheaval, home range boundaries were renegotiated. There was no more happy sharing of areas of overlap between groups F and G. Group G ended up displacing group F from half of their home range. Group F ended up moving over into the part of the group B home range. Group C moved away from group G. Group S moved into the middle. Everything changed. My main interest these days is conservation. So why am I telling you these stories? Well, these stories have implications for our planning for conservation of these endangered species, both for Siamangs and probably for other small apes as well that share some of these similar social adaptations. So I'm going to just sort of make some conclusions from this. And the first one is that because these animals are territorial and because their boundaries are stable and enforced over time, this makes them particularly vulnerable to changes in the quality of their habitat. So if their habitat is damaged through a logging operation, or as in this photo, an illegal road building operation, or the establishment of a logging road, a fire, any one of the different things that humans can do that can damage habitats, unlike some of the other mammals that live in these landscapes, they can't just move somewhere else. There's nowhere for them to go typically. Most of the habitat is usually occupied by other groups, and those other groups will defend that space. So they have limited behavioral options in cases of habitat alteration. These stories also show really conclusively that individuals are parts of groups, and that these groups are embedded within neighborhoods and attached to specific pieces of the landscape. Now, what does this mean from a conservation perspective? We're thinking about the kinds of things that can happen to wild apes. They can be poached, for example, and removed from their populations. They can have accidents, hit by cars, electrocuted. In these cases, you lose one individual. But what happens in the neighborhood when you lose one individual? My observations show that loss of a single individual can have effects that ripple out from that individual. Loss of a parenting unit may affect the successful rearing of their offspring. Loss of a partner in territorial defense may result in loss of part of the territory. So when we're thinking about how to protect animals, we need to think beyond numbers and think about connections. Ultimately, these connections with each other and with landscapes are what allow Siamangs and the other small apes to survive and thrive in Malaysian forests and in the Sumatran forests where I originally studied them. A couple of years ago, I got the news that my old friend Bambina had died in 2018 at the ripe old age of at least 34. And I mourn for her still, but it gives me a lot of joy to think about her offspring living out there in the wild and carrying on her legacy of being sort of successful parents, successful group members, and successful neighbors. And I hope, one of my hopes, coming from this this webinar and from spreading the word about small apes in Malaysia in general, is that we can all commit to doing what it takes to keep these animals out there in the wild, living their beautiful lifestyles. So I'm going to stop here and just thank all of the many individuals and institutions that have been helpful in supporting my research for the past 20 years. I can't list them all here, but there's some that I really felt the need to name. So, so I'm going to stop there and thank you all for listening.
Before you stop, can you get back to the previous slide showing the many Siamangs, because I have many guesses of how many Siamangs in the picture.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Give you a quiz. Let's go back.
Say 5. Some people say 5.5.
Okay. So let's go back and I will point them out to you. Okay. This was sort of a trick question. There's one here. This is a large juvenile. There is one here. You can actually see his inflated throat patch. I'll make it bigger so you can see him better. His inflated throat pouch. Siamangs have that inflatable throat pouch. There are 1, 2, 3 here, and there is a baby right in there. So there are actually 6, but the baby is kind of hard to see. So this is pretty typical though, when if you're following, you're like, where is everyone? There's usually one that's hard to find, but the correct answer is 6. So those of you who said 6, give yourself a pat on the back. You are correct.
Right, okay.
Aini, you're muted again.
Oh, funny thing. So I'm going to talk about, I'm going to say some of the comments from the chat box. Lady said, great talk, Susan. Toji said, was laughing a little when the auto subtitles recognizes Gmail as Gmail. We have a technological ape here, it seems. So some question from YM Liu. Can gibbons swim? Have the Siamang been observed to move across the Changkut River in the study?
That's a great question. They cannot. Actually, all of the great apes and the small apes have a real physical challenge if they're trying to swim, because apes have very large, muscular, long arms. And so their center of mass is very high on their body. So if you place an ape in the water, they would have to work very, very hard to keep their head above water. Our body proportions are different. It's much easier for us to swim. I have never heard a report of a small ape swimming. When they cross the river, they do so by jumping from trees on one side of the river to the other side of the river. You can imagine how fun that is for the primatologist who's trying to follow them, because we have to go through the old-fashioned way. So it wasn't my favorite thing when they did that, but they actually always go over the river through basically, connectivity in the canopy over the river.
I hope Susan has answered your question. Also another question. I think Ethan and Susan can answer this. Do the Siamangs have overlapping home ranges with the La gibbons and Agile gibbons?
That is a great question too. The answer is, well, we don't know from, they've only been studied in a few places, but from the sites where they've been studied in both Malaysia and Sumatra, it is clear that they do. Some small ape species where they meet with each other will be territorial even between species. It's a little bit more complicated where Siamangs encounter other small apes. They will share space. So I quite regularly encountered Agile gibbons when following Siamangs, but that doesn't mean they share it peacefully. One of the ways that that their coexistence can be problematic, a student, Dr. Alice Elder, actually studied the relationship between species at a site on Sumatra, and she found that the Siamangs actually are very aggressive toward the Agile gibbons and will chase them out of trees when they encounter them. So although they share their home ranges, the Agile gibbons appear to be quite frightened of the Siamangs, and they would avoid them and sometimes even hide when they saw the Siamangs coming. So they do exist, but not necessarily harmoniously. Different patterns may occur at different sites, though. We really don't know all that much about intraspecific competition among small apes yet. Great area of research if someone wants to go into it.
Yeah, that call for research. Ethan, do you want to show us anything? I think there is some comments on some graph on gibbons.
Well, I can just give me a few seconds to find it first.
Right.
There's so many.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm ready. Share screen. All right, if you can see this. All right, so if you look at the map of the Peninsular Malaysia, all right, so wherever you can see there's a bit of oblique bars over here, this is where you can find Siamang, usually in the central area of the main range. Okay, and then the blue parts is where you can find Lar gibbons, and the green parts is where you can find Agile gibbons. Right? Not only they do it in the Peninsular Malaysia, they also do it in the island of Sumatra. So Siamang is known to live sympatrically, though may not be entirely peacefully, with two other small ape species, that is the Lar and the Agile gibbons. But for Agile and Lar gibbons, they don't mix too well with each other. And that is almost the same case in Sumatra, which I don't have the map over here. All right. Back to you, Aini.
Thank you, Ethan, for the answers. I think I received some question from the chat box. Thank you so much. I will address some of this question afterward. I think we'll continue with Lisa first. Lisa is going to tell us more about seed dispersal stories and her experience working in Royal Belum. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Aini.
Hello, Ivy. Hi. Right, I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you, Aini and Suzanne and Ethan, for such interesting talks. As introduced by Aini, I'm from MIU. I study elephants, but I'm also interested in their roles from a community perspective, and gibbons are part of the community. So today I'll share with you what I've learned about the community of the forests of the Belum Temenggung. Here you can see on the map, it's up in the north of Peninsular Malaysia. For those who hasn't been there, it is the second largest forest complex in Peninsular Malaysia, well known for its man-made lake and the sightings of the migrations of thousands of hornbills. When we think about the rainforests, what comes to our mind? If we're lucky, some of us may think of our kampong or backyard forest, or we may recall scenes from the Africa rainforest where Tarzans live with the gorillas, or the forests of India where Mowgli is raised by wolves and protected by Baloo the bear and Bagheera the black panther. When I was much younger, I used to think all these stories happened in the Amazon because I related everything wild to the Amazonian rainforest. But no, there's no gorillas or tigers there. Likewise, many of us might not know that the Malaysia rainforest is one of the most biodiverse rainforests and one that still retains many large animals. Unlike many regions in the world, the number of species that have gone extinct is low. Our forest has the largest megafauna such as the Asian elephant, tiger, tapir, leopard, sambar deer, gull, wild boar, and sun bear, small invertebrates, reptiles, birds and rodents, and many medium-sized herbivores, carnivores, and primates, including the gibbons. Although we have a high diversity of wildlife, the number of species is declining quickly due to habitat loss and poaching. Our rainforest also has fruits of all shapes and sizes, and these rely on animals to move their seeds. Few plants in the forest have their seeds dispersed by wind or other means. We often describe nature as the web of life. We see simple versions in our textbook as food chains. No single species on Earth lives without depending on other species. Thus, biodiversity is more than just species. It is the interactions between species that kept us alive. So examples of these interactions are the pollination and seed dispersal interactions, where plants provide animals with food and the animals help plants pollinate or disperse their seeds. These interactions are very discreet to observe. It takes years to study an animal. And is it possible to understand the connections for the highly diverse Malaysian rainforest? We tried to. So my colleagues and I walked the forest to collect fruits, record what's eaten and which seeds are dispersed by different animals. Here, you see fruit and seeds eaten by squirrels and the teeth mark created by their pairs of incisors. Some of the seeds hoarded by squirrels may escape and eventually grow into young plants. Gibbons swallow and poop seeds out intact nearly all the time. This makes them superb dispersers. And elephants drop piles and piles of dung over mouths, and this is how plants move. Bats carry fruits in their mouth, hornbills in their esophagus and large beaks. Macaques store seeds in their cheek pouch, ruminants in their stomachs, and subsequently regurgitating the seeds. So we combine the data we collected with local indigenous knowledge to understand these interactions better. The Orang Aslis have arrived in the region at least 50,000 years ago. Using their knowledge help us understand the system that would otherwise be impossible within a short time, at least before the time when some animals go extinct. And what do we find? We worked out which animals have similar jobs because they disperse a similar set of plants, and which animals have important roles, either because they disperse the most seeds or because they are moving seeds dispersed by few others, such as large seeded fruits dispersed by elephants and rodents. So it seems complicated, but there are many plants and animals in the forest, and this helps us understand how they are all connected. In the forest, not all species are equal in their roles. Some are more important than others, and the most important we call keystone species. So imagine you remove the pebble right at the top, everything will collapse, and we call this ecosystem collapse. A habitat will be dramatically different if the species become extinct. In our network, we found a couple of very important species, and they take on different roles. And we think a keystone species for seed dispersal in the forest are the gibbons. This graph shows ways of measuring importance, and gibbons are at the top for all. They are also the only animals with an overall control of the entire network, linking many plants and animals in the habitat. So why are gibbons so important as compared to other animals? Gibbons are true frugivores who spend most of their feeding time on fruit. Many animals in the network may be omnivores, insectivores or folivores who consume more leaves and fruits. Among primates, they are effective seed dispersers who swallow most seeds whole, as compared to, for example, macaques who like to eat fruit and also chew seeds. Gibbons can disperse seeds as far as 1,000 meters away from the parent plant. In our network, gibbons help disperse the highest diversity of plant species, followed by elephants, rats, binturong, and hornbills. At present, Siamangs are the largest ape we find in peninsular Malaysia. The orangutans are extinct. Their forests were found in the Lenggong Valley in Perak and Butter Caves in Selangor. From the list of our important seed dispersers, many are either endangered or vulnerable. And what happens when we lose gibbons and other important animals? An empty forest is a forest that has lost its large mammals, hence losing all the jobs provided by these mammals. To add on to that, it doesn't mean that other seed dispersers that are not large or disperse few seeds are not important. In the forest, a seed has a low chance to escape from seed predators and pathogens, to be removed by a seed disperser successfully, to be deposited at a suitable site, and to germinate and grow into a young plant, to survive from herbivory, and to eventually grow into an adult tree. So even animals that disperse few seeds or fruits that are removed in low quantities are important for the forest. The Malaysian forest is dominated by beautiful giant trees called the dipterocarps. They mass fruit in 3 to 10 years intervals. When you trek and stand on top of mountaintop, you can recognize some by their light green canopy. Some of us may have played with their seeds before. They are important carbon sink and they adapt well to different types of soil. Their fruits are not eaten by many animals, but there is a huge range of other fruits in the forest too. With the loss of large animals, many fleshy fruits from a big range of families will lose their fitness over time. The abundance of these trees will decrease and be replaced by fewer species that do not need animals. Over time, the entire system, whether it is plants or animals, will become less diverse and will either go extinct or become functionally extinct. So that is, they exist, but they no longer perform the roles they serve. And we see in some of the more fragmented forests nowadays. And let's not let this happen. Let's make sure there are still gibbons to fulfill their jobs as seed disperser in the beautiful forest, and there are still forests so that gibbons have a home. Thank you for listening in, and thanks to all my sponsors and my supervisor and co-supervisor to make this research possible.
Thank you, Lisa. Any question on Lisa's presentation? Susan, maybe you want to ask Lisa? No?
Oh, yeah. Well, I told Lisa beforehand that I was going to ask her whether she thought that where forests have already been emptied, or where there have already been local extinctions of important seed dispersers, that we should prioritize reintroduction of seed dispersers to those landscapes.
So maybe I'll share my screen again. So part of our work, we studied the phenology of the forest, and something that you need to consider to rehabilitate or to rewild any animal is that they have enough food resource for themselves. So down here, you can see that we have collected the trends of the fruits for different animals. And there is this particular period called the lean period, whereby there is low resource for many animals. And if you want to rehabilitate introduce any animals back to the wild, maybe provide platforms such that they can overcome this period because they are not used to the environment. And before we do anything to introduce animals to the habitat, we perhaps can check and monitor for this fruiting phenology. Yes, to make sure that the habitats are suitable for the animals.
Right. Good job, Lisa. Thank you. Lisa is going to defend her thesis next week, so show her some love. I'm going to read some of the question. I'm going to open this session to everyone, all of these three speakers. The first question from Prof. Zimbo: to anyone studying gibbons in Malaysia, has anyone observed snake population in gibbon species in Malaysia, or know of any reports in Malaysian gibbons population? Anyone wants to take this? Susan or Ethan?
I do not know of any reports of sneak copulations in Malaysia. Nobody is studying habituated gibbons in Malaysia right now. So you would have to have very well habituated animals before you can observe with that level of detail. Doctors Chivers and Raymakers studied gibbons in Malaysia several decades ago, and they never observed any sort of sexuality outside of the pair bond in their observations. I have observed non-monogamous mating in Sumatran Siamangs, and such behavior has also been observed in a few other populations, but to date in Malaysia, I know of no reports. This is supposed to be a family-friendly program, so maybe we shouldn't talk about that.
Right. Okay, Ethan, do you want to add anything? No.
Well, the last study that was done for gibbons in Malaysia was in 1970s, 1980s, 40, 50 years ago. So really, we do not know much about them right now.
All right. Okay. So next question from Makiko Uchikoshi. Are there any sex difference in subadult siamangs? Motivation to carry infant and any individual difference?
Yes and yes. Whereas all of the older individuals seem to be motivated to interact with the infants, but I have never seen a subadult female carrying someone else's infant. Whereas I've seen even juvenile males do it. The juvenile males, typically it's not really by choice. The infant is often infants of both sexes are very interested in males from from older juvenile and adolescent males in the group to the fully adult males in the group. So I'm not sure if the difference really relates to the motivation of the adolescents and subadults, differences between males and females, or whether it's actually an infant-directed behavior, whether the infants themselves are seeking out male assistance. But there does seem to be, whereas the subadult females, not really the juvenile females, do seem to be interested in infants. I've never seen one carry one, and I was looking for that behavior. So there is a sex difference. There's also a lot of individual difference. I didn't want to talk about it all day, so I just kind of glossed over a lot of variation. But some males are excellent fathers, some males not so much. Some subadults are substantially helpful. Others will occasionally carry the infant but don't help it very much. So yeah, there's a lot of variation around this behavior.
Okay. Next question. I hope it answers your question. From Malayan Rainforestation. Since most limestones are small habitat island, and would there be enough resources to support healthy, viable population? Anyone wants to read this? Ethan or Susan or Lisa?
Was there any limestone vegetation in Sumatra?
I'm sorry?
Is there
limestone? I'm unaware of any sort of, karsts like we see around the Marapo area. I'm not going to say they don't exist, but I am unaware of any if they do. I haven't been everywhere on Sumatra. Gibbons can sometimes persist for some time in surprisingly small habitat fragments. As I said, their home ranges can be tiny in some cases, but surviving isn't the same thing as persisting in the long term. Typically, from the little data that we have about this, suggests that in smaller fragments, ultimately local extinctions will occur. Individuals may live out their lives in a really small fragment, but often there's reproductive failure. So when the adults die, they aren't necessarily replaced. But there's some kind of shocking stories of, for example, islands that are formed when lakes are dammed, and there's like one pair stuck on an island, and 20 years later, they're still there. Gibbons can be hardy little survivors, but it's doubtful that we would see a viable population persisting in a very long term on a really small habitat island, unless it's connected to other fragments.
Okay. Next question. I'm going to. I think that this question interrelates to another. From Lewis Smith. He asked, how often do wild gibbons have interaction with humans? Are there any neutral interaction? And then secondly, from I think I saw from Kusia Kaha. Hi Kusia. Some Malaysians keep gibbons as pets like macaques. How do gibbons fare in captivity? I think it interrelates with another. So maybe do you want to take this?
Ethan, would you like to field those questions?
Well, gibbons do not fare well in captivity at all because, well, first of all, their home range is large. Okay, even though you let them loose in a house, it's never going to be enough. So they need hectares of land and living with their own family. You see, and some pet owners, they lock them in the cage. And maybe they can sort of withstand that kind of pressure when they are infants, but as they grow into subadults and adults, they will go mental. Okay, they absolutely go mental. They just wanted to kill themselves, and and then they will be aggressive to the pet owner too. You don't want to be, you don't want to have your face chewed off by your pet. You see, so no, they don't wear fell at all as a pet in captivity. Let them loose in the wild.
Right. Anyone wants to add up to that? No.
Just agree completely. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I saw Nadine's comment on Siamang being great husband. So I have a question from Iman Aidil. Hi, Aidil. What happens when a gibbon's partner dies? Do they move on?
Yes, they do. We used to think, there's this stereotype of pair bonded animals that they always mate for life. But in fact, and some do, some pairings can last decades. But for example, Bambina, the individual that I spoke about, had 3 different partners in the time that I knew her. Divorces have been reported, evictions. Sometimes they just don't get along and then they split up. Sometimes they are evicted, as in the cases of the males in groups, in a couple of the groups that I described, groups B and G. Sometimes a partner will die, and when a partner dies, on the rare occasions that we've actually sort of seen a death and found a body, so we know what happened, other individuals will move in and compete for both the breeding position, basically both the access to the partner, but also for the territory. So an individual who is widowed or loses their partner is actually at some risk of also losing their territory, because it's more difficult to defend a territory as a solo individual. And there is quantitative evidence suggesting that turnover in the adult composition of a group is a real risk factor for the death of infants and small juveniles as well. So these changes have consequences, but yes, they do move on. The pair bonds are more flexible than are often reported.
Can I add on to that, please?
Yes.
All right. So now imagine a gibbon is to be poached and then to become a pet on the black market. Okay, to get to the infant, for example, you need to kill the parent or one of the parent at least. So it takes about 10 years for a female to become mature, to have a baby, and usually 6 for a male. So if you get rid of one female, and then in order to get to the infant, it takes another 10 years to grow another one. And things like what Susan has described will happen: the territorial disputes, and then fail to defend the territory, and then the parental care will be affected. So just by removing one of the parents can have such effects, you see. And the thing is, when the poacher kills a parent or one of the parents, and unluckily the infant dies in the process as well, they usually move on and find another pair to kill in order to get to their target for the day, you see. So along the way, they've done a lot of damage, and then each of these damage will have ripple effects to the community. So now I've let you guys to imagine what's the effect of it.
Yeah, true that, agree to that. Let's take time to ponder about that. Next question, as we are pondering about that, for Lisa, is there from Yenyi, is there seasonal variation in types of seeds dispersed and types of animal dispersing them?
Hi, Yenny. So yes, we did find that there are seasonal variation in the types of seeds dispersed by different types of animals. So just now, I shared a graph of the seeds that are dispersed by arboreal animals, and then there's some that we find that, for example, those that are dispersed by sun bears or even elephants, they may not have the peak that is observed in primates, whereby you will have a lean period and then a high peak. Yeah, they may be fruiting at different time of the year. So it depends on the kind of animals that you are studying. It is important that they may not share overlapping trends at all. Yes.
Yeah. Next question. Thank you, Lisa. From Cynthia Lee, do we have statistic of Siamang's population in Malaysia?
We do not. That is something our team is working on estimating. Right now, Isa, our student Isa and Nurul Isa Adrina Mode Romeli is working on compiling her data, estimating Siamang densities in the Taman Negara area. Another student, Sue, has developed some estimates of the population in a couple of forest reserves around Morocco. But for much of the peninsula, we have no survey data yet. So we can make, really rough back of the envelope estimates simply based on how much habitat is left. But in most cases, we don't really know, whether Siamangs or Agile gibbons or white-handed gibbons are even occur in all parts of the forest. So this is very much an unknown, and this is a real problem in designing effective conservation interventions. So that's something that needs a lot of work.
All right. Yeah, that's true. We actually, adding to that, we are actually working on building the action plan for the small apes in Malaysia. Yeah. As we moving along, as you can see, as you notice, all these speakers are speaking about the Peninsula Malaysia, and there are still some needs to highlight about the Bornean gibbons in small apes. So we hope to highlight soon about these small ape species in Borneo in the upcoming webinar. So, okay, last question. Can we have last question? Yeah. From Cynthia Lee, your earliest sharing of the 3 gibbon species predominant in the central of Malaysia. Yes, it is. From Lewis Smith, if a gibbon has different partners, do they sing different duets from their previous partners?
That's a great question. There's an obvious learning curve when a new pair forms. It's actually quite funny. They will sometimes have sort of false starts, like she starts to sing the great call and he comes in at the wrong time, and then they sort of seem embarrassed and stop awkwardly. So each individual has their own voice and their own pattern of singing. So when a new pair forms, they actually have to learn how to duet together. So yes, the songs are going to be different. I mean, the basic elements will be the same. The songs are fairly standardized, but there is always some individual variation. So yeah.
All right. Thank you to all speakers. Can we take more question, or it's already 11? Okay, let's take one more. From Le Rong, how many parenting gibbon can there be in a population? Do they follow alpha male system? Yeah.
Okay. It depends on the species. In some of the species, not in Malaysia, but some species that occur at higher latitude forests. So in China, for example, it is normal for groups to contain 2 breeding females. There's some populations that where that is the sort of the standard pattern. In other populations, it's usually pairs, but there's some variation around that. The most common pattern that's been reported from both a long-term study in Thailand and my long-term study of Siamangs on Sumatra is 2 males and a female. In those cases, whether both males mate really varies. In some groups they do, and in some groups they don't. There's always one that's dominant. That seems quite clear. But sometimes subordinate individuals will mate. I've also observed subadult females mating with the adult males in their groups. Typically then they're evicted within a couple months of that happening though, but there seems to be a bit more tolerance between males in some groups.
I just feel that so sayang to leave this question. Are there any citizen science initiative? One last question to study gibbons. Yeah, Iza, like those arranged for migrating raptors, garden birds, and hornbills. Yeah. Susan, would you like to answer that?
Sure. So actually, Ethan, do you want to field it?
Yeah, just about to say that. So
Yeah.
just let me quickly share my slides. It takes me a few seconds. Right. So yes, there is one citizen science studies by my colleague Isa, who is not. I think she's in a chat feed earlier. That she collects reports from any of us, from Facebook, from social media, and we'll request the video recording, especially the song of the gibbons, and the GPS location. The smartphone will work just fine. The time and the date of your encounter. So, and then this is to help us to better understand what is their range now, because even though we have maps like this, the one that I've shown earlier, this is based on the 1980s data. Okay, even though the source is coming from the IUCN Red Release, but their data is based on that of the 1970s. So it may have been outdated, it may have been the same, but we are not sure. That's why we need the citizen science data to help us to better understand what is their range now. Where can you still find them?
And I'll add
Right.
that kind of information can also be useful in our action planning process. So if individuals have information about places that they've encountered gibbons over time, please do share them with ESA, because we are using that data. It's very, very helpful. Ethan's also done substantial outreach work. Most of our team members, Ethan, Sue, have gone to schools, worked with community groups, and are working actively to engage young people in conservation. So.
Yeah. Yeah, Ethan, have you shared before your work on Ulu Muda? Do you want to give us some slight preview on your previous work on Ulu Muda?
Well, I thought you never asked.
Yeah.
All right, here it goes. All right, so. All right, cool. Here it comes. So anyway, I guess most of you have already know where am I. So today, my sharing, at least for this slide, so here we'll give you a glimpse of on my journey of my research in of Agile gibbons in Ulu Muda. Okay. So before I move on, please answer the following questions. Okay, which of the following is a monkey? We have gone through quite a bit from since 10 o'clock. So if you cannot answer these questions, then yeah, I'm doing my job poorly. So yeah, let's spend a few seconds on this. Okay, which of the following is a monkey? Yeah, feel free to comment.
Eileen said D.
Okay.
LeBron said D. Liu said D. Lewis Smith said D and B. Eileen said B and D. Uma said B, D. Eliza said D. Christina said B.
All right. Seems like I'm doing my job properly, or we are doing our job properly. So, well, congratulations, all of you got it right. So it is indeed B and D. So B is the long-tailed macaque. We all know that. C, orangutan. D is a dusky langur, and E is another great apes, which is me, and A is actually the large gibbon. So gibbons are also known as the small apes, not because they are smaller than the great apes. We call them lesser apes. They're small, so let's call them small apes. They belong to the family called the Hylobatidae, and as of 2017, there are currently 20 species of small apes. All of them are either listed as endangered or critically endangered. Only one species is listed as vulnerable. They are distributed across Southeast Asia, South Asia, that is in Bangladesh and parts of India, Northeast India, and southern China. You can find it in the island of Hainan as well. In the peninsula, we have 3 species, while in Sabah and Sarawak, we have 2 species. If we dive down to the map just now, here it goes. And again, this is based on the 1970s to 1980s data. This is where my field site is, Ulu Muda. We talk more about that. So in Borneo, there are 2 species, the North Bornean grey gibbon and Apes grey gibbons. Both of these gibbons are recently classified as separate species from the Mueller gibbon in 2013, if I'm not wrong. So there used to be 2 species, but now there are 4 species. So again, they are strictly arboreal. They live in a mid and high level of the tree canopy. They don't come to the ground very easily or very often. Okay, they don't. Most of the reason is that they don't move very efficiently by walking bipedally like us, and it makes them to be exposed to a lot of threats, you see. And to move around in the tree canopy, they swing from one branch to another, also known as the brachiations. So this is actually a large gibbon. I've taken this video in Marapo. I slow it down so that it's easier to see. This happened in 1 second, actually. And they can swing as fast as 55 kilometers per hour. No human can run that fast, let alone in the forest, okay? So it's so fast. And yeah, I have no idea how people like Susan and other greater people than me do the habituation study like this. Yeah, you kind of have to chase them and they run away, right? So I have no idea how do they do that. So yeah, give yourself a pat. So they are highly frugivorous. More than half of their diets are comprised of fruits, and they do eat leaves and small insects as well. They are highly sociable. They call a lot. They talk to each other. And they often live in a family group with a mated pair, father and mother. And some has a bit of variation, like Susan has mentioned. And they are usually born for life and have a few offspring. And they are very vocal, even though they are very elusive animals. Their loud song can be heard from a kilometer away, if not more. So they do that because they want to defend their territories from the neighboring groups. So take Agile gibbon, for example. Their territory can be of about 22 hectares. Okay, that was from the 1980s data. And 22 hectares is about 40 football fields. So good luck keeping gibbons as a pet. Okay, you need to own 40 football fields. So what's up with gibbons in Malaysia? It needs our attention, first of all. All Malaysian small ape species are listed as endangered on IUCN Red List. They are threatened mainly by habitat loss and poaching for illegal pet trade. Look at this map. Okay, the green polygons, we call it, or the green box over here is where you can find Agile gibbon historically, okay, based on 1980s data. And look at this. Most of the areas now is basically red in color. It means deforestation. This is 2018 data. Now 2019, there may be more, okay? And then we only left with very few forested area. The yellow shape over here is where I studied, Ulu Muda. And then this part over here is Royal Balloon, where Lisa has studied. And this is the Bintang Range. Bukit Larut or the Maxwell Hill is somewhere here. So as you can see, not much left for them. The detailed knowledge is needed in terms of their population density, the abundance, so that we can plan their conservation action plan. So again, the last study was done in some 40 to 50 years ago. So we really do not know much about them. So how well are they doing in Ulu Muda? So these are the questions that I'm asking and, trying and kill myself to answer if you like. So this is my project site, Ulu Muda Forest Reserve. And I've chosen this site, and it covers an area of more than 100,000 hectares, consisting mainly of lowland dithyrocard forest. There are some limestone and montane forests in there as well. It is a critical water catchment for Penang, Kedah, and Perlis, supporting some 4 million people. So you see this, I totally enjoy my days over there. There are many magnificent trees over there. You can find Tualang, the one in the middle, that is about, let's say, 40 meters high. And then there are so many mammals in Ulu Muda. Lots of charismatic megafaunas, including elephants, tapirs, sun bear, and more. More than 300 species of birds. And you can find all 10 hornbill species in Ulu Muda. That really tells you how important and how special Ulu Muda is. More reptiles and a lot more insects. So I employed the method called the active bioacoustic survey in order to better understand how many groups are there in an area and how dense they are, or how packed they are given an area. Which my volunteer and I spend days in the forest, wake up early in the morning, hike in the dark to certain points in the forest, sit there for 4 hours so that we can listen to the call of the gibbons and record where it is coming from, the directions, the timing, what time do they start and end, and how far away they are calling from us, estimated. So the duet sort of gibbons is reliable for this method because, well, they duet, they sing together as a pair, male female, to defend their territory. So if one group is calling from these directions, and then you hear them calling from around the same direction again, and it's very likely that it is coming from the exact same pair. We find this method to be very time and economically efficient, and I've learned that it gives a similar estimate compared to the more traditional method, which is called line transect. So in the end, we did 9 such expedition in 9 areas, repeat 9 times within the course of 1 year. And then to compare the density among the forest type, we need to quantify how good is the habitat. We need to determine the tree densities, how big and how high is a tree. So we use the method called the vegetation speed plot to quantify the quality of the habitat, which around where we sit and listen to the gibbons, we do 10 by 10 meter square plot in the jungle, and then you measure almost every big trees in that plot, okay, in terms of the height, diameter, and canopy cover, and so on. And then we repeat that for 90 times. So ideally, this is how a plot should look like. Okay, flat, nice to walk, but no, it's far from, we are far from an ideal world. It looks like this. It's so steep, we have to do something like this, okay? But again, this whole research journey is full of fun and adventure. Nothing comes easy, but I enjoyed it. This is the reservoir of Ulu Muda. Until now, I'm still amazed by the many volunteers, each with different backgrounds, with special skills, who come together to make efforts to protect gibbons. This is our campsite. I know we shouldn't camp beside the river, but since it's dry season, so and this is my volunteers, Alex and Emilia, sitting on the listening post where we are collecting the data from. So they are there's a limestone cave in there, and then I took these pictures on purpose, okay, because we wanted to be bats, not gibbons, whatever. So and then this is by the riverside. I get to take photo like this, star trails, and yeah, I get my volunteers to carry 15 kilos to 20 kilos of stuff, mostly food, and hike 3 to 4 km. Okay, no cell phone receptions at all. So I will get to see interesting things like this, a python. Okay, we carry so many things so that we can eat like kings and queens in the jungle. Since there's no cell phone reception, it means you write your diary to your loved ones and send them as you move out of Ulu Muda. And this is one thing that I miss the most in Ulu Muda, which is the Sungai Labwa. Crystal clear water. The water is sweet. You can drink it without boiling it, well, at least to me. So anyway, I can only give you a sneak peek of my result because my results are not peer reviewed yet. But to make it short, even in a recently log forest like this, okay, on the right, which is log as recent as 2017, the gibbons group density is not that different compared to the previously logged or even unlogged forest. That really means well, when I say logging, I mean they are selectively logged. It's not clear cut or full-scale land conversions. So anyway, it does not mean that, hey, let's selectively log more forest since, well, the gibbon wouldn't care. But I'm really saying that even a degraded forest is a good habitat for gibbon, and we should protect those habitats as well. So why Ulu Muda is important for Agile gibbon anyway? Ulu Muda, well, the Agile gibbon is the only small apes in Ulu Muda, and as we understand it so far. And like Lisa has mentioned, if we remove that keystone species from the ecosystems, we have, Houston, we have a problem, okay? And Ulu Muda may be the last stronghold for the Agile gibbon on mainland Asia. Okay, most areas in its distribution range has been developed or fragmented. Look at Bintang Range over here in the orange box. It has been there are roads cutting across the range, and it's definitely compressing their habitat over here from both sides. Royal Bloom, yes, there's not much deforestation in Royal Bloom, but you can find Siamang in Royal Bloom. And like Susan has mentioned, they don't don't live that peacefully together. So the density of Agile gibbon may not be as high as that of Ulu Muda. So yes, we do find Agile gibbon on Sumatra, but if you're talking about the mainland Asia, Ulu Muda is probably the only place they see it as their safe haven. So why protect gibbons? They are integral seed disperser, like Lisa has mentioned, and it does maintain the forest health by spreading seeds. And why protect forest anyway? Because of its ecosystem services that it gives us. It gives us fresh water, clean air. It keeps the climate constant and cool. And if we talk about Ulu Muda, really, it is again a critical water catchment area for Penang, which is an economical powerhouse. Kedah, the rice bowl of Malaysia. And talking about it, we are talking about the food security of Malaysia. And of course, Perlis is well known for nature tourism. So what you can do really, you can follow us, you can like us on Facebook and Instagram, UNCA, which is the Small Apes of Malaysia Research and Outreach. The project of it is one of the projects of Malaysian Primatological Society, and we use UNCA because UNCA is given in the Bahasa Malaysia, the Malay language. So our purpose is to access the distributions, the abundance, and the conservation status of small apes in Peninsular Malaysia, and hopefully in Sabah and Sarawak soon. And we inform the management plans. We educate, and whatever I've said, my journey to Ulu Muda, I convert them into a board game. Okay, I run that in my hometown, and then also I do other sessions with other schools. And so is Sue. So I literally named that game The Conquest to Ulu Muda. Okay, so if you're interested, let me know. So you can scan this QR code, and you'll find yourself at our Facebook page already. So also, if you do come across any page or sharing or news like this, report that wildlife crime to either Perhelitan, or you can report to MyCat at this number, or you can buy the new UNCA fieldwork T-shirt. It's dry fit, and it has the logo print on it, and it's only 15 ringgit. I'd like to thank Nadine, who's in the chat feed, and my co-supervisor, Professor Nick, and Susan, and Fad, and also I would like to recognize my financial contribution from Bradford Foundation, ASP, and my starter, which is the crowdfunding platform. And special thanks to Jaime of Earth Lodge, Greensmith, who helped me with some manpower and borrowed me some tents. And then Isa, Sue, and all the field assistants that have worked for me. So more information, you can email us at malaysiangibbons@gmail.com, or simply scan the QR code over here. So that's all from me.
Thank you, Ethan, for your. I think you have wrapped up everything, and also promote Malaysian Primatological Society as well. Thank you for that. So I'm going to take only 2 questions before we leave, and we wrap up and we leave. First question is from wait, I think I saw. We have so many volunteers. We have Eliza Rahim. We have Kutsia Kaha volunteer to be the sound over. Well. A question from Razy Gerson, Rodney Chai. Can we detect their stress level using bioacoustic?
Susan, I don't know.
I don't think we know that. Bioacoustics is an incredibly promising way of learning more about vocal animals like small apes, and our research collaborator, Dr. Dina Klink, is doing some really interesting work, but specifically the link between stress and vocal characteristics hasn't been well established yet. We just don't know. It's a great idea, though. It would be good to know. another project for an enterprising young future gibbonologist. We have lots of people want to volunteer to do work. Well, that would be a great project.
Right. As we have so many events coming up after this, in like with International Gibbon Day on today, we have Project Monyet going live at 11. Also, we have sections on small apes, IUCN. They will be going live in their Facebook live, 6:30 p.m. Malaysian time. And also tonight, Jedi pages, Bam and also Dr. Ida from Indonesia will be going live in their Facebook live also. So it's a whole celebration for International Gibbon Day to educate more about the small apes, because we need to highlight. It's about time to highlight them and to address them as the national priority. So I'm going to wrap up. Any final words? Ethan, we go one by one. Ethan, Susan, and also Lisa. Ethan first.
Well, I would like to address this to the people who are younger than me. I'm not super young. I might be the youngest among four of us. But for those who are younger than me, who are still in their secondary school or high school, or going through their tertiary undergrad, I would like to address to them. So study hard, be good at it, and specialize hopefully in gibbons, so that you can do your part to not only protect gibbons but also their habitats, if not other species of animals. So if you are interested to become a master student for UNCA at USM, for example, so do contact us, write to us on Facebook, write to our email, and then we can arrange that, as we do need more hands on the ground in order to understand their distributions. And if you like to follow them, do the hard way, to understand their behavior and diet and all of that, do join us as well. We need more data on this. I consider myself, I'm doing the rather easy one, just to sit there and listen to them, although there are some hard things that happen along the way as well. But we're starting from ground zero. So do come, join us and help us.
We all can't wait. We all can't wait to go back to the field, huh? Lisa, do you want to say anything?
Well, maybe to technologies out there. So like my work, we did studies on the whole community, even though we study elephants. So I encourage everyone, young scientists out there, to always take a look at the whole community and how your animals fit into the role. Yeah. And then, so I'm from MEME, and if you want to know more about elephants, do go to our MEME website. Yes. And yeah, protect our habitats so that all the animals have a home.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. And Susan?
Okay, I'm pretty sure I'm the oldest person on this screen. And as such, I want to sort of echo what both Ethan and Lisa have said. Ethan highlighted the role of young scientists, the really crucial role of young scientists. You all look young to me, in really advancing the cause of conservation. But Lisa also pointed out the need for a whole community. Basically, forests are made of communities, and so are conservation movements. Not everybody has to become a scientist to be part of the solution to the problems that Malaysia is facing. What some of us can do is spread the word. What some of us can do is advocate for change, work to protect forests, work in your own community, educate people not in your social networks, not to keep primates as pets, educate people that tigers and, I mean, I love elephants, but tigers and elephants are not the only interesting wildlife in Malaysia. So there's a role for everyone, and I hope that everyone that's come here has been motivated to work to make the changes that you yourself can make, because we're all part of the solution.
Right. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I guess it's a wrap up. This session is recorded on the Habitat Foundation YouTube and also Facebook. And also you can find us on Facebook, Management Ecology of Malaysian Elephants and Malaysian Primatological Society. We are all on Facebook. also gibbons of Peninsular Malaysia. You can always reach out to us. Give us some feedbacks, questions. You want to be a volunteer, and so on and so forth. So with that, I would like to thank you for coming. Keep on supporting. That's all. Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.